What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Mist Podcast. I am your host, Aeromist. And today, I'm going to be talking about asking the right questions. Because I think no matter what we all do, we're seeking after something. There is, in our own design, the realm of chase. And even if it is not to seek after, it is still the maintaining of something. Right? Because we have to maintain ourselves, or we have to seek something that affects how we maintain or how we fluctuate or how we evolve or how things continue to flow. And asking the right question can literally change everything about what you're going after, how you're creating your personal goals, how you're creating your spiritual goals, how you're siphoning after things within the field of information. And I think it's very important to remember that you have to know what you're looking for sometimes to ask the question. But asking the right question is just so that you can get the right answer. And sometimes that's a part of the question, is what answer are you looking for? Because depending on what answer you are searching for will depend on what you get. Because any one question can have a multitude of answers, and sometimes it can have an elongated multitude of answers, and sometimes with a soft definite and sometimes with a complete definite, as in there's only one. Sometimes there's multiple, and sometimes it's a perspective that you have that you take on something that gives you the proposition of a question to begin with. And so it comes at that point where when you're asking something and you really want to understand it, before you ask the question, why am I asking the question to begin with? What do I want out of it? And that's a part of just the basic point of getting to the point and not wasting your own time when you're asking questions and you're trying to figure things out, or you're trying to come to some sort of concrete, conclusive outcome or answer that you have yet to fully comprehend. Now, the scope of our perception and your perspective alone can be a completely different reason for each person as to why or why not you got the answer you got. Because if you are told a sentence as an answer, but you take that sentence in a way that is not out of its purity of truth, then you could completely dilute and distort the information in front of you. And it's imperative to know when this is happening or if it's happening, because you can ask a question and get an answer that doesn't actually give you the answer, or gives you an answer that kind of goes around it. And it can give you an idea, and sometimes it can even give you a direct answer, but how you take that information even depends on if it's true or not, right? Like, being told whatever about something specifically, but that specific thing that you're being told about, like, you have some questions. And even if you have some questions, if you just kind of take it all into heart, even on top of your questions, and you don't really cipher for understanding it, then, did you really ever want to know it by asking the question to begin with? And I think this is just something important to bring to the forefront of our minds, because you really can waste your time just asking the wrong questions. You can waste a lot of time just going through the motions of the bullshit and over and over asking the wrong questions, because you'll get the wrong answers and you'll walk in the same circles and I think that in itself is just not seeking the understanding, but seeking the question for other means. And if you're seeking information or some form of information for understanding, then there will be a full-on, concrete, one-fits-all answer for you to understand that. And maybe it has to be metaphorically represented to you just slightly differently for you to be able to comprehend it at the level that you choose, or I say choose, that you are able or capable of comprehending things. Then that's when you can fully grasp it. But knowing and understanding something are completely different things. And are you asking the question to respond, to make it seem like you give a shit? Or do you ask the question because you have the general curiosity to understand? And that is the big difference at the front of the gate on, what's going to be what and what answer you get. It's kind of like AI in a sense, but in a different type of perspective and a different term, because prompt engineering and things to do with AI are roughly the same. It's like your question, it has to be just as good, or your prompt has to be just as good as what answer you want to have. So bad prompt means bad outcome. Good prompt usually means good output. And the same thing can kind of be said for like how the universe works. You know, if you ask questions but you don't have any sticking point of understanding, that you're kind of wasting your time anyway by asking it, because you're not even going after something you're truly seeking. You're just kind of, wasting. I don't want to say even wasting, but you're just kind of filling your thumbs around and like listening. But the comprehension part of the listening is a very, very important duality to that entire sequence. So I think it's imperative that we kind of put this together, like, okay, well then what does it mean to ask the question? And I mean, once again, knowing your intention. Intention is everything, especially when asking a question, because that's going to completely dictate what answer you get from anybody or anything even the internet, whatever it might be. And even when you're seeking to understand something from a person-to-person basis, right, about someone or whatever it might be, there's still a point of taking in the energy to have a cohesive comprehension. And if there is no cohesiveness behind the comprehension, you're still not going to get it. So although this one might be a little bit of a shorter one, I feel like it is important to really dilute away from the nonsense and into our practicality of like, well, how do I ask the right question? Am I asking a question for the right reasons? And sometimes that's just reaffirming and reaffiliating your purpose for why you're doing something or why you're asking the question. And I guess that goes into a whole different topic of moving with intention and doing things with intention. But if you do it with no intention and no seek for understanding, then you can waste everybody's time all day. But for a realm of efficiency, it's very important to just get to the point. Ask the question you want to ask it outright. And I mean, I think maybe sometimes the question is something many are afraid to ask because they already know the answer. See, that's a real big thing, is that if you're asking a question you already know the answer to, or you ask a question that you have already come to a conclusion of inside of your own mentality of what that is going to be and dictating it as that, but not bringing yourself back down to realize what you were actually searching for to begin with, or just giving yourself the credibility to know you asking the question is a part of you already knowing the answer anyway, which is a very interesting way of looking at it. But it's kind of just like if you thought about it yourself, you probably would already know, and you would have that curiosity because of that, because you already have an idea of it. And sometimes people can help you put the pieces together, don't get me wrong, but that's almost like, someone putting one small little puzzle piece into the whole frame. But I think many ask the question to fill the whole frame with only having like one little piece of whatever they're putting to it, right? Which could be the question. And then the answer can be so broad that it can pretty much show you any outcome at that point. So you got to kind of come back to that haven point with yourself on, if you have intention, then make sure that you still are aware of whatever it is that you're trying to put out, because whatever you put out energetically, especially behind the intention of your question, is what you're going to get back in. And it's an interesting understanding of the universe and its loops and its fractals and everything else. But I think talking about the question itself, or asking the question, or anything to do with the question, asking a question, because that's like the whole point on how we start finding and getting to a realm of understanding, especially between each other. Because when I got questions, and that in itself as an idea is just stemming from curiosity. And I think that's kind of the whole pros of what I'm giving, is that take your curiosity serious, take yourself serious. Maybe you don't have to all the time, but your intention will always match what you put out. And so to get the right answer, an answer that you might not actually have, and sometimes seeing and understanding the real truth is what's going to give you accurately what it is that you're trying to find or to bring to you. Or, you might already have, once again, an idea of most of it. It's just that one little thing. And if you are formulating a question, you'll have already crafted it from the knowledge you have. And that's kind of like, AI, once again, can assist me with something, and it can assist me with multiple things. But the thing that it can assist me with is the thing I know nothing about, absolutely. Because if I don't know how to make sure that the AI is going to be at least on par with, sticking with some basic things, then it can take you way off the fucking wall. It can take you into a whole different world. It can completely misinform you or misguide you, miseducate you, and all those other things. And so that's why finding this foundation of knowing where your intention lies is a very, very good segue to making sure that you are accomplishing whatever goal it is that you have that you put out. So, putting the thought into the thought is in itself an entire way that you ask the right question or ask productive questions and getting to the point of asking what it is that you're trying to ask so you get the appropriate answer. Your inputs will always match your outputs, no matter what. And this is not just for questions, but this is pretty much just for anything and everything in your existence. But as long as your intentions match the question, then you're going to get the answer that you really desire. And I'll add a sprinkle of thoughtfulness into that, and you'll probably get the roundabout. But there's also the nonsensical point of questions where, like, you ask the question out of a different response mechanism in the body, almost like out of emotion, but you already know the answer. And I think that's kind of a real big proposition in this whole thing, is that you already know the fucking answer, bro. You literally already know the answer. You know what it is. And if you don't fully know what it is, you still have an idea of what that answer probably is. Conclusional wise, you probably have an idea of the conclusion. And that's like a very, very big part of it, is knowing where you're at when you're asking these things, and like what's driving you. Is it, is my emotions going to just completely take over and segue everything out once I have asked this question? Because if you can't remain a point of logic while asking your question anyway, then it's going to be very hard for you to actually not only see what the truth really is, but take it in fully into a point where it resonates with you so that it sticks with you. Otherwise, you'll ask the same question forever. This is somewhat of a very short, simple, base topic, but I think is important because I've had it asked to me where people ask questions and I basically reform the question for them in the same motion, because I'm like, no, that's not really what your question is. You're technically asking this, but in a different format. And by a different format is in asking me it with too much of a broadness and not enough of a narrow, concrete, here's the answer. And I'm going to give you a very straightforward, concrete answer. So the question's going to match that. And that's why I format that in my head. And that's how that works. But I encounter that often, and I feel like it might be a very congressional topic to put out to the world. So ask questions. Never stop asking questions. But asking the right question is what gets you the right response and the right answer. That's it for Aeromist on this one. I will catch you guys in the next one. Don't forget, check out all my links in the description. Aeromist.xyz if you want to go check out what I got going on. And thank you for listening, any of you, or stumbling upon this and listening through if you have. I appreciate it.